All right, gang, here we are. We're in Chapter 5, Data and Process Modeling. Now, we've talked about this briefly in Chapter 4. And we're going to dig in a little bit deeper in this chapter. And we'll move through the objectives. We're going to break it down into two models, a logical model and a physical model. Now, looked at data flow diagrams in the past, and they show how data moves through a system. But it doesn't show how the program or logic processing steps take place. So we've got different symbols that mean different things. Okay. So we've got a process, and depending on whether we're talking about Gain and Sarsen symbols or Jordan symbols, now one on the left is going to be what we see more predominantly. Okay. So it's a rectangle with rounded edges on it, says apply payment. That's a process. The line, that's the same in either one, and that's data flow. Students, it's like a rectangle on its side, open on one end, and that is a data store. Somewhere data is being stored. And then we've got external entities that are outside the system itself, and we'll see those as squares. Okay. So the process symbol has to have at least one input and one output. Usually has a name that ties to its functionality because process is action. So it would be a verb. So we see here, data flows in to the create invoice process, and then something is generated or outputted from that system. Now, in some systems, we have multiple layers of processing taking place. Okay. Now, we've got some bad data flows, and here we're showing a process that's showing data flowing out on either side, or here's another one, data flowing in from either side and nothing going out. These things don't necessarily work. Now, the bottom one, you say, well, it's got one going in and one going out. Well, what's coming in? A date of birth. Date of birth has nothing to do with calculating a grade, so you have the wrong data coming in. So a data store symbol represents data that is in a system store. Now, it doesn't show detailed information about the data store or the contents. It's just labeled. Here is where the data is, or who has it, what system is holding it. It has to be connected to a process with a data flow. So here we see data coming from a process into a data store and then going out to another process. Now, you can't have data going from one data store to another data store. It needs to go from a process to a data store, or from a data store to a process. So we've got entity symbols. It shows how the system interfaces with the outside world as a whole. Now, we see a bank, a customer, they're outside entities. An employee, it's outside of the system. So that, yes, they are in the organization, but they're outside the system. So they are an entity. Okay. So you can go from process to process, yes. Process to entity, yes. Process to data store. And now either direction, no problem. We can't go from entity to entity. We can't go from entity to data store, and we can't go from data store to data store. Okay. So we can create a set of data flow diagrams, and sometimes it takes some getting used to. Now, the processes themselves, you'll give an index. It's a unique reference number identifying each process. Okay. And we'll see that there in the context. Data coming in, data going out. Doesn't necessarily have to be a straight line. Whatever makes it show the flow as efficient as we can. Okay? Now, just like the processes had a unique identifier, the data stores do as well. So the processes, they're labeled 1, 2, 3, and the data store is D1, and if we had others, D2, D3, D4. Okay, so we see them here. There's D2, D3, and these are different segments of potentially the same data flow diagram. We're just breaking it into the smaller components. So here's a customer interacting with a certain system in a warehouse, and this one may be the same warehouse interacting with another component of the system. Okay. Okay. Now it takes some getting used to when it's laying these things out, how to organize them and get an understanding. All right. So it may take us a little bit of time and practice. The more examples we see, the better off we are. Okay. And you can have the same data flow diagram displaying things in a different or more detailed way sometimes, but we've got to make sure that we have it laid out the right way. So here we're showing just a general process, and here that process has some more things going on. We could break that single process into 3 different processes that involve 2 data stores. Okay. Now a data dictionary, sometimes it's called a data repository. It's a central storehouse of information about the system's data, where it came from, how it was generated, where it goes, where it's stored, everything about it. So that if we want to find out about a piece of data, we can go look in the data dictionary. So we've got a data element and a record. Now we'll use a case tool for documentation when it comes to the data dictionary. We'll document everything we can about the data and the data elements. And we've got a form that we can go fill out when it comes to documenting the data dictionary. Now when it comes to documenting data flows, we could show step by step where the data goes and how it's set up. And this will help us create that data flow diagram. So we document the data stores, document the entities involved in the system, and get all the records laid out. Yeah. We could create a report from the data dictionary that'll explain everything for us. We need to have some process description that'll explain what's happening within the process, so that we've got a good understanding of what's taking place within a process, that it's not just, there's process 1, fill order. What's happening in the order filling part of it? Okay. So we've got different tools that come into play. All right. We've got decision tables that show the logical structure with all possible combinations when it comes to making a decision. And here we go. When it comes to credit status is okay, product is in stock, right on down the line. Okay. And that'll help us understand, should we accept the order, reject the order, by doing these decision tables. Okay. I'll post a video just about decision tables and decision trees. Okay. So let's go on through it. So when it comes to this chapter, we dealt primarily with modeling and showing the data flow diagram and the data dictionary. We understand why we need to do both of them, because when it boils down to us getting an understanding and documenting what's going on, if anybody has a question, where's that data come from? How's it being manipulated? Who did it? Where? It's in that data dictionary. If we want to see a graphical representation of the system as a whole, a functional diagram, not functional, but a data flow diagram. We want to see how the data moves in and out of the system. We want it to happen efficiently and effectively. And if we can lay it out in a diagram, that'll help us to get a better understanding of, is it working right, and what, if anything, could be done to improve it. All right, so we'll see you in the next one. What's the next one? It's chapter 6.